Okay, so now we made it to the end of this section, and we're going to be talking about exporting modules. Now, we're laying another layer here. I want you to understand how this works because we're going to be exporting components when we get over to React. So understand the rule and the principle here. Get your head wrapped around this, and it's going to make it a lot easier to understand when we get to React. Now, if you're new to this channel and you would like to follow along in the curriculum, it is free. The link is in the description and you don't have to sign up. So let's get into the curriculum. Exporting modules. We learn how to pull in useful code in the form of modules. Again, in React, this is going to be components. Understand the concept here. But what if we write clever code that we want to share? Fortunately, Node allows us to make our code available for use in other programs. So this concept here, exporting module, is a JavaScript deal. It's a foundational JavaScript understanding. So you're going to be exporting things, files and components using React. So this is why we're going over this. This is why it's important to understand this. First, some basic points. Every Node.js file is treated as a module, also called a package. From a file, we can export a single function or a set of functions. You're going to be exporting functions as well in React. They will be inside components. I'm going to keep saying that because I want to make sure this gets planted deep within your mind. Starter code. We will use the following code sample to practice how to export our work, making it available to import as a module. Here's the code right here. Now we're asking you here to go to the file inside of our JavaScript project. So I'm gonna go here. I already have it opened up. And here's the file right here. So we have the file. Make sure you are in the correct file, folder or directory. I'm in the module directory in the exporting module directory. So that's where it says right here, exporting module. I'm in the directory. If I do a ls here, it's letting me know what I have in it. I have the index.js and I have the practice export. So if I go over here to the JS, there's nothing there. So your job is to fill this in, export this file in, so you have access to the functions. Okay, so exporting a single function. Let's start by exporting the isPalindrome function. At the bottom of the practice.js code, add the line module.export, and the assignment operator is palindrome. And so at the bottom, now what are we talking about? We're talking about here at the bottom of this file. Understand, we have to export this file. All you're doing is taking this code right here that we gave you the instructions and just pasted it in, or typing it in if you would like. But notice the syntax, module.exports. You should have already, you've been familiarized with this. We've already introduced this to you in your assignment. If you were in the class and I spoke about when I was doing the walkthrough of assignment 1, I was telling you do not touch anything that was inside of that module.export. This is why we're exporting the isPalindrome function, and we're calling it by the name. Notice we have 3 functions here, and we're going to do all 3 in a moment. But this makes the function available to other files. So now I'm able to get access to this function to other files because I exported it. Now in the index.js, we import practice export.js. This is where we will import it. We'll be doing this in React. We're going to be exporting and importing, importing. So understand it. Now with the required statement, isPalindrome gets pulled in as and assigned to the new variable palindrome check. And we can now call the function from within index.js. This is something you're familiar with. Notice that we have it inside of a string because you need to put it in the path, because this is a path inside the string for required in order for it to locate the file or to import it in. So we import things in React. We call it import. Here we're saying required, and we're saving it inside of a palindrome variable. And we'll explain later on in React, but I just want you to get your head wrapped around it. We're planting seeds here. And then when we do the console dialog, if you run this inside of the index.js, you remember how to do that. You do the node.js to run it once you get it in there. So all you're going to do is this. Yep, node and index. And there you go. All I did was hit tab to finish off the path or the file name. You could do the same thing, shortcuts. Now, there are several points to make about the code and output. Assigning its palindrome to module.export allows us to use that function in other files. So I can assign, as long as I have to export, I can have 7 different files. All I have to do is use this require, which will import it into whatever file I need to import it into. Even though we require the file practice.js, it only assigns is palindrome because that's the only function we exported. Okay, follow me. Now, thus, type of palindrome check returns a function. That's what we did right there. We checked to see what the palindrome is. It says it's a function. And palindrome check now behaves in the same way as is palindrome. So calling it palindrome check, and we pass in the string that evaluates to false, since that is not a palindrome. So we know the function is working. But then we pass it radar, as you can see, and it's true. So it is a Boolean. It's checking to see if that's true, because that's how we wrote the code, correct? Now, when we need to export multiple functions, practice.js contains 3 functions, and export all of them, we can use a different syntax for module.export. Instead of setting up a single function, we will create an object. So here we created the object, and we're passing all 3 of the functions in this time. Not just one, but all 3. So when you go back and look at your code, we have 3 functions here. Now, within the curly braces, we created a series of key value pairs. Remember how functions work. We have keys. This is a key. This is a value. The key is the same name as the value, so this may be confusing a little bit. But think of it like this. This is a variable. You can name this whatever you want to name it. The value in this case is the name of the function. So we just gave it the exact same key just so for best practice. So you'll see that a lot. But you can play around with this. Name the key something totally different. When you run this code, you're going to get errors, but figure out how to make it work, because you need to understand that these are keys and not the actual values. They're the reference to the value. So this can be confusing because we're using the exact same name. But understand, anything to the left of the colon is the key. Everything to the right would be the value. We do not have to make the key match the name of the function. I just explained that. That's why I say, but doing so helps maintain consistency between files. We do this as a best practice. But again, change the name of these so you can get your head wrapped around that these are keys. You might be tempted to use 3 statements to export the 3 functions, like so. But what does it say? This will not work, because Node expects only one module.export. You only can have one. And think of that concept, because when we get over to React, you can only have one export default. You can export as many functions as you want, but you only can have one export default, and we'll explain when we get to React. Now, the statements in a file, no error would be thrown if you use more than one, but require, and the name of the module will only pull in the information from the last statement, which will be probably this one right here. So you can play around with it and see what happens. Now we want you to try it. Use the object note syntax as shown above to modify module.export into practice.js. We will include only one or two of the functions, but for this practice, let us use all three. So here we got practice as the actual variable, and we are storing in practice the require, and we're passing in the path, which is practice.js, which is the module that you created. Now we look at the type of practice, and then we're going to pass in practice to get back to the console what these two are. Now type of indicates that practice is an object now, and printing practice gives us a list of its key value pairs. It is palindrome. We're going to have function, and it's going to have the value right here, because we're saying that that key is a function. It's inside of array too. It's coming back looking like an array. All of the functions from practice export are included in the practice object. To call them, we use dot notation, practice.function name, which is, and we're passing in the argument. We're going to pass in the argument. So practice.function name, like we have right here, is palindrome, and we're passing in mom. Practice.even or odd 9. And then we did the array down here. We looped over the array, and it says true, odd, 1, 2, 3, world, and it gives us what? In the array, it gives us all of these. But guess what? What it does is the first one that says is mom a palindrome, true, and then we had an odd number, and then it gives us 1, 2, world, LC 101 is what it gives us. Now we're looping over, and we only passed in 3 because it says under 3. So 1, 2, 3, world, and LC 101. So is I less than 3? Well, if it's at the 0 index, is that less than 3? But we're using a random dot element, so you got to see what the random array element does as a function. Now success, you exported your first module. Again, you need to play around with this code. Now you might be wondering, if I have 20 functions in a file and I want to export them all, do I really need to type 20 plus key value pairs in module.exports? The quick answer is yes. Require only pulls in items identified in the module.exports. The longer answer is, you missed the point. Just like functions, we want to keep modules small and specific. Each module should focus on a single idea and contain only a few related functions. Within this in mind, we see that practice exports fall short of the goal. Even though it is small in size, is palindrome, even or odd, and random array elements do not really complement each other. They will be better placed in different modules. But basically, in a nutshell, put them in different components is something we want you to get familiar with. If you find yourself writing lots of functions in a single file, consider splitting them up into smaller, more detailed modules. Doing this makes a debugging easier, organizing your work, and helps you identify which modules to import into a new project. A module titled Clever LC 101 Work is not nearly as helpful as one called Array Sorting Methods. Check your understanding. And that's the end of this chapter, the end of this section. Again, you got to do it. You got to do more and more. Play with the code. Understand the key value pairs, understand the objects, how they work, because you're going to be using them a lot with functions. So they're very pivotal to your career. So the better you can get your head wrapped around these now, the more we'll be able to add to it later to your understanding. Okay? So remember, the more you do, the more you improve. See you in the next chapter.